Well, here we go, friends. We are on chapter number 37 in the book, The Little Things Matter by Todd Smith. And hopefully you're following along. Maybe you have ordered the book or you had the book from the past when the wake-up calls used to happen. And I hope that you have really just with intention been following along as we've been sharing. And if you don't have the book, that's awesome too. Maybe you're on the road and you're driving right now and you don't have a chance to have the book in front of you. That is absolutely okay, because we're going to read it to you this morning. We are on chapter 37, and the title for today, Your Word is Your Bond. Your word is your bond. Here is what Todd has to say about this one. There's an old adage that you probably heard from your parents. You're only as good as your word. Translated, it means you do what you said you would do when you said you would do it. But do you? It's ironic that although almost everyone will admit to placing a high value on keeping their word, fewer and fewer people actually follow through. Keeping your word, demonstrating that you can be trusted, plays a powerful role in how you are viewed by others. It is the foundation of your personal character and your brand. In the long term, it strongly influences how you view yourself. And quite frankly, it dictates whether you are a person who is respected and accepted or ignored, disregarded, and scorned. Honoring your word is integral to a good marriage, solid friendships, and mutually rewarding business relationships. It also includes carrying out the little things you say you will do, such as calling when you said you would, remembering to let your neighbor's pet in as you promised, turning in the report on time, or showing up to the party after sending in your RSVP. If you become known as someone who doesn't honor your word, even occasionally, the repercussions can be devastating. Once respect is lost, it is often impossible to regain. Backing out of a commitment usually results in guilt and time wasted in an attempt to avoid those we've let down. When we've shirked a commitment, it often takes more time and emotional energy to circumvent a situation or repair a damaged relationship than it does to keep our word. Undoubtedly, there have been and will continue to be times when you agree to do something that you later regret. However, once you have agreed to do something, don't back out or procrastinate. Don't hope the other party will forget or wait for them to remind you. When you have given your word, implied or directly, that you will do something, you must do it and do it when it is expected. After you have fulfilled your obligation, however painful, learn from the experience. Why was it so hard to follow through? Was it a matter of time? Did you not consider what was involved? Whatever the reason, figure it out and know that it should factor into your decision-making process the next time you are asked to do something similar. Living up to your commitments also contributes greatly to your self-image. Whether you realize it or not, falling back on your promises is a sure way to erode your self-esteem. The more frequent the occurrences, the more risk there is of a sustained negative self-image. Think of the last commitment you failed to fulfill. How did this experience make you feel about yourself? Becoming a person of your word boils down to a couple of basics. Think before you commit. With few exceptions, there's no reason to act hastily. It's perfectly acceptable to tell someone that you need time to think about the request. Take an hour, an evening, or a day to think it through. Consider all that is involved and decide whether or not it's something to which you're willing to commit your time and energy. If not, politely decline. Once committed, don't back out. I have asked myself hundreds of times, what was I thinking when I made that commitment? Even so, I mustered everything to uphold my end of the bargain. Honoring my word is essential to who I am. It's one of my core values. As a result, I'm very careful with the commitments that I make. And here is Todd's challenge to us before I turn it over to Jamie for his thoughts. Starting today, become the person who lives up to your word and does what you say you will do, even when circumstances change. Uphold your word with a good attitude. Remember that it was you who said yes in the first place. Take every opportunity to learn from your commitments so you can make better decisions in the future. Do you have any unfulfilled commitments? Do them now. You will feel better. He says, if your quest is to be the best, strive to be known as a person who always does what you say you will do when you say you will do it. What are your thoughts on this, Jamie?
Well, I love this, and there's so many things. I know one thing I love about doing these calls and is just we always have a conversation, usually the night before, and then in the morning again, kind of before we jump on. And so it's always to teach us to learn kind of thing. And this, so much to say about this, and I think it's really simple. He said it, you're only as good as your word is something, we've heard, but something that we teach the boys. And I think you can take the different side of that, and it's probably something you've also heard is, if you don't have your word, then you don't have anything. And it's really a character and a trust thing. And, we all know, those people that say, hey, I'm going to do something, and that you just know when they say it, they're not going to do it. They're not going to follow through, right? I had a father who was that way, and, there's people in your life. We all have those people, right? And you might be thinking, gosh, I'm that person. And if so, that's okay too, because I've been that person, because that was what I was taught. But I had to look in the mirror and say, I want to change that, and I want to be different. So I've always loved, he mentioned the word commitment, commit to yourself. I mean, it's kind of that season where people make kind of promises to themselves and things. And I think, commitment is a real fickle thing that sometimes people throw around. But commitment is a real simple thing. It's a all in or all out. I always say, when you talk about commitment, a real simple lesson in commitment is tell your spouse you're 99% committed to them and 1% committed to the rest of the people on the planet, the women on the planet, if you're a guy, or vice versa. And you'll get a very quick lesson in what commitment looks like, because you're not committed. Commitment is an all-in. Your word is your bond. And we always, teach that to the boys. Do what you say you're going to do. It's not a big thing like everything else in this book. It's little things. They're character things, but, when you say do what you say you're going to do, it doesn't just mean kind of, following through and showing up. I think there's it's such a bigger thing in your example and your actions, right? And most importantly, kind of for me as a father, and, a husband is when I am always, kind of, we teach the boys, right? Be a man of your word. It's something, if it ever say, hey, you're not a man of your word, it's like the worst thing that they could ever hear. They don't hear that because they are great. Even Charlie, who's 10, sitting right here listening with us, he strives to be a man of his word and follow through on the things he's going to say he's going to do. Not just the big things, but the little things. But I think, many times we have to be committed to ourselves, and it's about our example, right? And what do you do? One of the things I think is such a big thing when you look at that is, when we hear so many times parents, I was a coach and coached basketball, and many times, guys, they would just be so hard on their kids, and they would say, in what we do and in life, they say chase your dreams and just go after it and work hard, and I always would step back and say, but you're not doing that, right? If you're not doing that, and you're preaching a word, that's the same, not being kind of. Your word is your bond. I believe your example is that, right? When you say you love Jesus, right? It's your example. We're never perfect, but you walk and talk a little bit differently. And I believe I had this conversation with a good friend, Rob, just the other day. Commitment just looks different, right? It just looks different. That no matter what you're committed in, you just walk and talk a little different. There's a intangible thing that looks different, and that's a character thing. That's your commitment to yourself. And when you commit to yourself and you you follow through on your word to yourself, and you just do those little things. Each little thing you do builds, belief. It builds character. It builds, trust in yourself, and you continue to grow and move forward. So I think there's so much about that, when you commit and you say, being your word is your bond. It's a really tough thing sometimes, but be very intentional, because it's not just the big things. Just like this book, it's following through on the little things, right? Just the little things. And when people can count on you, and most importantly, when you can count on yourself in the little things, obviously God then will trust you with the big things. So that's my take so much on that. We can talk about it for the rest of the day, but I want to turn it back to Holly.
Awesome. Well, I love that, Jamie, and I love your take on that. And there is a saying, I'm trying to remember it. I've been trying to remember it since Jamie's been talking, that the greatest sermon you will ever preach is your example. And I think this is exactly what we're talking about here with your word as your bond. And as Jamie and I were talking about this chapter today, and we were reading it, and as I read it this morning to you all, I just kept having this image of someone that I know and I love very, very much. He is one of my heroes. Jamie is my hero, but so is my dad. And my dad's face just kept coming up as I was reading this chapter. And I hope that you will bear with me here as I give you this quick example. So my dad was an operating engineer, and he worked his whole life getting up around 3:30 in the morning, and he would get in his truck, and he would drive to wherever the job needed him to be. And he operated heavy equipment in construction. He was a crane operator, and he was really good at his job. So he was in high demand, and he went lots of different places, in different states, and he drove. And I was very active in sports growing up. I played every sport imaginable. I played basketball and softball. I ran track and cross country and volleyball, and I played softball in the summers. And one thing that I knew was no matter what, my dad was going to show up. I don't care if my dad was in a different state. If he said, I'll be at your game tonight, I guarantee as I was out on the court playing basketball, I could look up in the stands and my dad would be there no matter what. He was a no matter what dad. My mom as well, but I'm just thinking of my dad because he never, ever has broken his word with me. I'm getting ready to turn 48 next week, and I was talking to Jamie, and I said, my whole life, my dad is someone that his word is his bond. And not only as a child being able to count on my dad, but as an adult, when something happens and Jamie and I are just not sure how to figure it out, he's the first person that we call. And because I know if he says, okay, kids, I'll be out, he lives about 10 minutes from us, we know he's going to show up here. And as a child growing up, it means everything. And as an adult, it means everything as well. But it's given me an example to pass down to my children that when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. When I say something to Jamie, I'm going to do that, I will do it. And you might be on this call thinking, well, I didn't have a parent like that growing up. The question I would have you ask yourself is, how did that make you feel? How does that make you feel today as an adult? And if you think about it, you'll either have a really good response or you're going to have a not so great response to that. And the great thing about that is you can change that. You might not have been given that example of your word is your bond, but you can change that and be the example for your family, for your children, for your spouse, for your friends, for your relationships, your business relationships. I think it's such a big thing that is really a little thing. And so when I was thinking about this chapter, I just kept thinking about my dad, and I'm so very grateful that he lived this out and he continues to live this out, that his word is his bond. and it has made quite the difference in my life. It is a little thing that has absolutely mattered to me. So some things for us to think about today, and we appreciate y'all joining in, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Don't forget, we're here Monday through Friday at 8:15 Central Time, 9:15 Eastern, and we hope you'll continue to plug into these morning wake-up calls. We love you all so much, and Jamie will unmute the lines.
All right, I'll unmute the line so we can say goodbye, and everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
There we go. God bless you.
Thank you.
Great message.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Very nice.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless.
Have a nice day, you guys.
You too, everyone. Thank you.
I love it.